Hello, my sunshines, and welcome back to another episode of Your Session with me, Dr. Deborah Brown. And we are in our guest series, and we are having so much fun this season and inviting some of the most interesting people on. And I'm really hoping that you'll be able to learn something new. But the reason that we're doing this is we're inviting new perspectives. We're inviting people from an area that they are an expert in, that is something that typically we're really curious about or that we need to know. So we've talked about everything from money to self-esteem, and the season really focuses on entrepreneurs, people that have created something from their own authenticity, their own creativity, and they've really found something that's really them expressing themselves outward, and there's a lot we can learn from that. So I am very excited because our guest today is Hope Taylor, who is a medium. And I want to tell you a little bit about Hope before we get started. She has been working as an international psychic medium and mentor for 10 years. Her intention is to help others with healing and empowerment through connections with the spirit world. So there are some obvious connections here to mental health and to trauma and to healing. So I would like you to welcome Hope today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to
Yay.
be here for this conversation and to work with someone in the mental health space, as such as yourself, with so many people that work out of your Brownstone Center. And I've loved being just in your presence. We can't stop talking,
you.
so we hopefully keep it, to a minimum. If I
Yes,
start
we
revealing
do
our
like to talk to each other because I feel like we have this empathy connection
Yeah.
of we do different kinds of work, but we're
Yes.
working with the same kind of feelings with people all the time,
Absolutely.
which was
An intention, right?
an intention, right? So your intention, let's talk about that. So
Yeah.
a lot of people think about mediums and they have a lot of ideas about that. So tell me about what you actually do, what your intentions are with your work, and a little bit about how you got there.
Sure, absolutely. I think it's really important to understand that this work, the meaning behind it is different for different people and how they show up with it. Because there are amazing psychics and amazing mediums that might work with there's people who work with missing people. There's people who, in the psychic realm, looking for people who are still alive and present with that same skill set.
Mm-hmm.
There's people who will help people with just children. Loss of child is very, very impactful
Well,
with
that's got to be a
parents that are
terrible
grieving.
thing
But
to
some
have to
people are
do.
just so focused on that specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
My intention with healing empowerment comes from my story and just being a younger person that needed more support, more help, more understanding, and more empowerment in my own personal experience, that I had one special person that was able to give that to me. And when he passed away 10 years ago, December 20th, 2025, that was when I realized that, okay, no more messing around. It's time to go, because he's no longer in this physical world. And he and I were such a great team at life. But when he passed, I was like, no, I need to live more like him. I need to be that for other people. It was no more denying like my mediumship, basically.
So it took you
34 years.
right. So you lived your whole life, and what were you feeling?
I was feeling overwhelmed, not completely understanding why I would have certain information, whether it was from people who were physically here in this world or even in the spirit world, and how to interpret it. I never had the conversation, if that makes sense, because it is a back and forth with the spirit world. A lot of it was me just ignoring what I would receive if it was a person from the other side, and trying to shut it down as quickly as possible, which physically my body can't handle. So I would
What
pass
did you
out.
think it was?
So if it was a relative, a guide, or an angel for myself, I felt comfortable having like the back and forth and listening to my own intuition and my own connection. But when it came to, let's say you and I are in a room and we just met, and your energy is very big and you have a lot of spirit people around you, I would not be able to focus on the conversation. I would be
Oh,
getting
okay.
inundated with so much extra, and my body would not know what to do with that. So what would happen is I'd actually start to see like stars. My vision would go, my hearing would go, and I would pass out. I'd get real hot and sweaty and I would pass out.
That's exactly a great metaphor for what happens when we don't listen to ourselves
Mm,
in any way,
mhm.
right? And we talk about it all the time on the podcast. We talk about you have to listen to what your body tells you
Yeah,
because it's always telling you. And when we don't listen, that's what
yeah,
causes a lot of our stress and anxiety and depression.
yeah.
So you were the ultimate example. You had this storm
Mhm.
and you weren't listening.
I was trying to tune it out because obviously there was a lot going on for
Mhm.
many years. And anytime I tried to talk about with others, my connection, like if it was my family, if that makes sense, it was pushed down. So I wasn't actually being invited with my biological family to that this is okay.
They
Like I was
criticized.
3, 4, 5 when I was hearing stuff, seeing stuff, and
Oh, wow.
experiencing stuff, and it was just kind of made fun of. So it wasn't actually fostered. It was more like, great, you have an imaginary friend, or, just
Isn't that everything about trauma though? Is
Mhm,
childhood trauma is about us trying to be who we are in a context of people that don't love us enough to allow that or to encourage that.
mhm.
And that's we've talked about this. I think it was even the last episode where we said childhood trauma in essence is you trying to get a difficult person to love you.
Yeah,
So if
absolutely.
you come out and you're this different kid
Mhm.
with all of these sort of different things happening and everybody squashes that, you're automatically traumatized because you're
Yeah.
being made small.
And the most beautiful thing about my late teens and early 20s, and even I would say even into my early 30s, was the journey of learning to love myself.
Mhm.
And I could not show up in this world the way that I do unless I learned how to do that. So the connection with mediumship and mental health, really taking care of myself and working on that healing so I could show up for others. I had to take care of myself first because I had mentioned to you very briefly before our group event, I wanted to go to school for psychology,
Mhm.
but I didn't think I was worthy enough. So I stayed safe in accounting. How can I help other people?
Two completely different
Like,
directions. I can't see you as an accountant. What would you do with all this empathy with the numbers and the
um,
calculator?
so I think that I had, I was very driven. It was very
Mhm.
black and white. And in a world where things were so out of control as a child, it was really healing for me to
Mm,
make sense of things that were in control. So I had
okay.
a touch of the, cleaning bug all the time to keep
Mhm.
things nice and neat and straight at my house. I had a, just, I don't know, like numbers. I loved the safety of like, this is a revenue, this is the expense, and reports are reports, and information is information. And I
There's no
was,
empathy required.
and no, I kind of
Okay.
could put a plug on it, if that makes sense, while I worked on
Yeah.
my healing, and I did that in different ways.
What do you think was you said your uncle's passing was a catalyst for
Yes.
you. What was the sort of the internal message that took you from I'm going to hide from this to I'm going to embrace this and not only embrace it but put it out in the world?
Yeah.
What was that experience like that transition? Because we
So,
talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and
yes.
everybody has that moment where it almost all falls apart or
Mhm.
things are really not okay and then when they become authentic they tend to thrive and succeed.
Yes.
But there's usually a moment,
Right.
right?
So there was a lot of different things that led up to that, and this might be a longer answer than, but it kind of is necessary. So to explain, my uncle Charlie was I'm related to him from my biological mother's side. My biological father raised me the majority of my life, and he was the type of person that both of my biological parents actually respected, loved, and listened to because he was just such an amazing communicator. Came from a heart center, and they trusted him.
Mhm.
And I feel like I don't know everybody's story, but both my parents were deeply hurt as children and entered marriage and had 2 kids before they worked on themselves. So they weren't the best at showing up and giving the love and the attention that myself and my sister needed. So it was very difficult between the two of them. I experienced neglect from both parents. I experienced physical abuse and sexual abuse from my father.
Mhm.
So I have a little sister that I kept safe, and I took the brunt of most of the abuse. She had a different experience with my mom than I, and stayed with her for the majority of her childhood, but then at some point came to live with my father and I just couldn't find the answer. My senior year of high school, where do I go? If I leave, she's here left with him and I can't
Oh,
keep her
okay.
safe. So I had this epiphany that I couldn't I couldn't leave her. And I had gone for help several times to people in the family who did not actually do anything. And I never told my uncle, but my uncle was always present in the sense of like talking to my parents and
Mhm.
getting them to do things or like show up on Christmas as a surprise and stuff like that. So he would write letters and he was present in that way, but not necessarily from like the time that my father went to prison in 1998 or 99. 99, he was charged in 1998, but 99 he went to prison for he took a 20-year plea, so he
Wow.
was facing 97
So
years of
you ended
use.
up
Yes, I went to the
testifying and
yeah,
all of that.
I went through a big, yeah, a big
That's a
thing in
lot.
an
Yeah.
early time. And this was before, I think that, if you think about how, our society is now with talking about how I mean, I hate to say it, like statistic wise, how often this is
Mhm.
happens to people. I thought that this was the most rare thing ever. We never talked about it like in
Mhm.
our society, or like we didn't have the internet, or like, which is,
Right. You
it was
thought
a
it was
different
just your
time.
family.
I literally remember looking around at like in seventh grade and thinking, I wish I had these kids' problems, the things
Mhm.
that they're complaining about and why they're tired, like I just was a very serious kid, and it's very heavy to talk about it like this. So hopefully people aren't, watching and being like, oh, don't feel bad. It's the good stuff
But
is,
it's part of your
yeah, it's
story.
part of
It's
this.
part,
Yes.
and we need to do that. We need to
Yeah.
be honest about the fact that,
Yeah.
and this is why I love this series, because everybody we've had on has said, I went to therapy and
Yeah.
I had to acknowledge that I had a mental health issue from my life.
Yeah.
But that's part of what I want to do with this series is have people look at you. They can look at you online and go, she is so successful. Look at her. She's beautiful. She's got it all together. But they have to know that you didn't wake
That
up like
wasn't,
that.
no, absolutely
That
not.
we all have a
I struggled with
story.
confidence. I struggled
Mhm.
with eyes on me. I struggled with believing in myself. I struggled with, but at the end of the day, when my when my father went to prison and my mom, I tried to know who she was as a person and heal from that relationship too, because that was a different situation with her than my father. My uncle Charlie was the voice of reason, like for her too, like your daughter just wants you to see her. She doesn't want anything from her. Can you please just acknowledge her? Like I could, and two, just constantly checking on me and reminding me just how capable I was,
Like a guardian
Oh my
angel that you
gosh,
needed.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And he became like one of the most present people in my life. He surprised me on birthdays and, like would just show up, like live states away and just show up. Like no one, I know as an adult, when you're busy and you're raising I mean, there's times when my little girl and I got home from work and I'm exhausted and he lives in Florida, but his car's in front of my house. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, like this is the best ever, but I wasn't expecting you like,
But I have a
yeah,
theory about this. I think that when we grow up as traumatized children, and I
yeah,
did, is that when you have a guardian angel or you have even just one
yeah.
person, I was lucky. I had a couple of aunts
Yeah.
and they would pop in on me or they'd take me for a haircut or
Yeah.
they would just do
Yes.
something nice.
Yes.
And I found that that was the reason that I could have hope
Yes.
because you have this glimpse that I might be in terrible circumstances, but there's somebody out there
They
who
see you.
loves me or sees
Yes.
me, and there's another world out there for
Mhm.
me. And I think that that little bit of hope
Yeah.
can be the thing that
Yeah.
saves us and
Yeah.
that fosters the hope as we move forward.
Yeah.
And you were
And
lucky in that way for sure.
oh, and I had this ability very early on, despite all of the heaviness and hard stuff, to always see the light. And I
Mhm.
do believe that it became, apparent to me that it was because of my Uncle Charlie and the way that he saw me and the questions he would ask me, like your aunts talking to you.
Mhm.
You're the only person in the room when they talk to you because they care. Like someone who doesn't experience that level of connection with their
That
parents,
that is
they're
like
like,
candy.
yeah,
It's like candy.
yeah,
And I think other people, and I know with our children, we try to do that, right? We
yeah,
tried to give them more attention and
yeah.
more self-esteem. But I think that we did not have people around us going, let's make sure your self-esteem is in gear.
Oh
So
my
when
gosh.
somebody pops up and they give you that, it's golden. And I think it's a reminder to everybody listening is we always talk about be that person. We talked about it with the holiday episode.
Mm-hmm.
Give somebody a call, be that person.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in your work, sometimes you can be that person for people
Mm-hmm.
in a moment
Oh
because of
yeah.
what you do.
Oh yeah.
You're coming in and saying, and I saw you do this. We had widows in the room when we were
Mhm.
doing this, and I
Yes, we
saw
did.
you say, like, I understand that this is so hard for you. This must be so bad for you. And it was just such It's a gift to give somebody that level of compassion
Mm,
because they just get up and go on with their lives.
mm,
They take care of their children, they go to work. And I don't think people are still working with their grief in any
mhm,
kind of way. So I think what you do sometimes recognize is, I know you feel a loss
mm.
and let's try to make you feel better.
Yeah. And
That's really
the
nice.
one widow said, "Well, I have to because I have other kids." And I said, "Well, I've been doing this for 10 years and I've worked with thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, and not everybody does it the way you do it, and you're
Mhm.
doing a hell of a job."
Right,
And
because not everybody
do you
can do
remember
that.
her face? Like
Mhm.
cuz she could acknowledge being seen in a different way by somebody who's worked with this type of, you know,
The loss.
yeah,
And so that's
deep
one of
loss.
my first questions is,
Yeah.
to be honest, I am a scientist. I am a
Sure.
researcher, right? And
Yeah.
I think we've even had this
Oh,
conversation
yeah.
that I am a very fact-based
Yeah,
person
me too.
and I'm not a spiritual person or a
Okay.
religious person.
That's yeah.
So when I think about this, I always thought about it as a novelty, right?
Mhm.
As, oh, let's, when we're on the
Oh, yeah.
boardwalk, let's go to
Oh,
this
yeah.
psychic, right?
Totally.
But it's been so interesting getting to know you and seeing that I don't have to understand something to necessarily believe that it's useful.
Mhm.
And I think that's where I used to be more of a skeptic, like, well, that's not true. And now I'm
Or that's not for
thinking,
me.
or that's not for
Right.
me. But now I'm thinking it of it in a different way as I don't understand it.
Mm.
And that approach for me in life has been life-changing, to not judge what I don't believe or
Understand.
what I don't
Yeah.
do myself.
Yeah.
But so what I would love to do is get sort of your views on the things that I don't understand and that none
Sure.
of us understand.
Yeah.
None of us have the answers about what happens when you die. None of us know really about anything from a
Mhm.
religious. There is no proof of all
Mhm.
this stuff. It's all about faith.
Mhm.
But for you, you have a window into
I
something
do. And
that's
it's
a little
unknowing.
different.
Yeah.
So share your feelings
Mhm.
about death, spirituality from your
Yeah.
perspective, from what you've seen, because you've seen things we
Oh, I've
haven't
seen a
seen.
lot. Um, so, I mean, I think one of the most amazing things, especially over the last couple of years, because I think my understanding of it deepens as I go, right?
Mm,
And oftentimes before people pass, some of the people who have had the most suffering are actually having the most healing before they transition into the spirit world because
explain that. Yeah.
they're releasing things that they've held on to for most of their life that was unprocessed.
So you're saying if I talk to someone that I had a bad relationship with, that person could be different when you share what they're where they are at that moment.
So, a person, we're not even getting to the death aspect, but people who are with others through their passing. So, people who haven't quite died yet, but someone who is assisting them and supporting them, however they're doing it. If they're the caretaker, they're just sitting there. There's a moment, I think, where some people pass peacefully and others have a really hard time,
Mm,
whether it be emotional pain, physical pain. And it's really hard for loved ones to support and watch and carry that and not quite understand it. But with readings, I have been able to sort of back into that, talk about the cause of what, without prior knowledge of what they were experiencing, how they held on to that, and what was unprocessed. And that before they pass, they're letting it go. They're getting it out of their physical
mm,
body, whether it's through the physical ailment or the emotional thing that is affecting the physical body. And if, that is a concept that's a little bit more difficult for some people to understand. I've seen a lot of patterns, with people who suffered a lot of grief in their life, that's connected to the lungs. There's a lot of people who live in the past that's connected to the hips. There's a whole book that Hayes wrote about it. But there's certain organs and certain body parts on us, even the heart. The heart's a big one,
mhm.
that unhealed emotional things will affect us in a physical way. And at times before someone passes, they're actually through that suffering or the release, they're their healing before they transition into the
Oh,
spirit world.
that's such an interesting way to look at it. We do that in mental health, where we look at it as sometimes that your body has an Achilles heel,
Mm.
that everybody has their spot that their stress goes.
Yeah.
So some people you're unclenching your jaw or you're
Yeah.
having migraines.
Yeah.
And it is really interesting because that's being proven more and more
Yeah.
that there's this somatic
Hmm.
connection to the way that we live our lives.
Yes.
And I think that's so interesting because you're saying that the way that sometimes our bodies die
Hmm.
is a reflection of the way that we've lived our
Yeah.
lives.
So the healing is really starting even before we pass. And the
Mhm.
beautiful thing is, after the soul transitions, they go through this life review process. And the only way that I could explain that is sometimes people who have had near death experiences,
Mhm.
they get a flash of things in their life that maybe either they suppressed or they didn't look at quite the same, and they have these realizations of where they need to let things go or to look at it a different way to integrate that healing, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. And then they get the second chance to like be here and do life again. They're like, oh, I'm going to do it differently, I'm going to, and it's really interesting if someone does, fully transition. They go through the whole life process and where they showed up, where they didn't show up, how they talk to people, maybe what they didn't say, and their whole purpose and what they were supposed to do while they were here. And did I knock it out of the park, or did I make too many left-hand turns,
But is that like a waiting area? Because and
So,
forgive me for making it so
science based, I can tell you
okay.
this, and there's a lot of this out there with neurology. So, there's a chemical that is released in the brain before we transition that they know happens. And while that process is happening, I think that's when the life review process is happening.
It's activating
I don't know if
memory
it's
in the brain
DMT,
or
like there's something,
Mhm.
I wish I had that. If I knew that I had the question ahead of time, I
Right,
would go
right.
get the science-based thing, and maybe I can look it up. But I know Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it oftentimes when he does different podcasts as well. But that there's more science around it. So,
Mhm.
which is really helpful for people who are very science-based. And two, that's another thing with accounting. I'm very evidential with my mediumship.
Mhm.
Like, I love good evidence. Let me look around. Let me tell you what's going on in the room. How many people are there? Like what do they look like? What does the room look like? What were we feeling? What was happening? Stuff like that. So, yeah, so a lot of, a lot of the things that happen right away, people will call it like a holding space or a holding room. When my uncle passed, he was there immediately. So my first experience of him in the spirit world was he was with me, but where he was in the spirit world space is different than like when I see him now in the spirit world. He was more like by himself, and it felt like there's no time and space on the other side, they say, but also I'm thinking like as accessing him where there is time here, I could see how it was different, if that makes sense.
So he went one place in the
Hmm.
beginning
Yeah.
and then went to
He
another
was more
place
by
after
himself
that.
anytime I
Okay.
looked, when I looked. And then it was like, it's like the more that time passed, anytime I would connect with him, I can see him with other people. I could see him doing things. He's not the type of person while he was here to just like sit around. So sometimes people who are very active and very much connected to themselves, as he was, like he was definitely fully purpose, full intention,
Mhm.
like spreading love everywhere. Like he's a helper. So I could see
So he
him.
would have gone over and
Yes, and
connected
the
to people.
amazing, like, just helping, like, he's just a helper, and I can see him sometimes even earthside, like, it's even when I'm connecting with him, like, "Where are you? What are you doing?" You know? And
So, but
who he's with.
that's really a positive view, right? So you're saying that, he had this little bit of a waiting period and then he went and he's being who he is. Do you
Mhm.
ever get any of the darkness of the,
Oh, yeah.
there's always the heaven and hell paradigm, right? We've all been raised with that there's the bad place and the good place. What is your feeling about that?
My feeling about that is on this earth plane that you can actually create heaven and hell in your own experience.
I believe that.
And the way
Yes.
that you look at things and the way that you view things, you can say, I'm such a good person and all of this bad stuff is happening to me, and really focus on how unfair it is, and worry and fear and all of that, and literally create things from your mind
Mhm.
to happen.
That's basically what a lot of what we
Yeah.
do in our work as therapists is we go, why are you carrying a belief that doesn't serve you?
Review.
Why are you carrying a
Yes.
perspective that doesn't serve you? And when you can really change that, it's almost like the sun coming out.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that I don't have those moments still because, I'm a human having a human experience where I go, why is this happening to me? But then when I realize that everything is happening for me and it's either this or something better,
Mm.
I let go and I surrender to what could happen. And I have more of those moments of heaven on earth. And like even talking to you about like my ride over here, I'm like, oh, I know that this is going to be an amazing podcast.
And talk about that. What did you feel? Because that's kind of what
Spirit.
I'm curious about. What is that physical sensation or what does it feel like to do what you do in your body?
Um, there's a spectrum of things, but when I'm connected to a higher vibration, I feel lighter. I feel lighter. I feel happier. I feel like singing in my car. I feel love in my heart. I feel joy. And that is, truly all of the higher vibration or frequencies, if you want to take it to a science level, there's frequencies. That heaven is the spirit world is comprised of. The where I connect is
Mhm.
it all encompassing. So I can also feel like heavy, heavy, heavy stuff. And usually when they're giving me evidence of their life and the things they experienced, that's when I feel those lower vibrations and the heavy stuff. And then, because my process is evidence of their life, relationship, anything that they want to say to me, how are they with you now, any loving messages. But I have never connected to a soul in the spirit world that was what I would say, oh, this person is living in hell. No,
Okay.
it's not like 1-800 dial a
Right.
person.
It's not that simple, right?
No, but oftentimes I do find that even if there is like trouble accessing a certain person, once I've talked to who they need to hear from, there is a chance that I can get who they wanted to hear from if there's trouble. Most of the time I can get it.
Okay, so we were talking about the idea of heaven and hell
Yeah.
and sort of like when you're feeling things, do you feel that like this is a bad person in a bad place, or is it different than that?
So yes, and to circle back, I explained in this physical world how we can create the heaven and hell and also what's happening in my body when I connect and how spirit will present themselves in a way of what happened while they were here that could feel really difficult and heavy and dense, but also the healing that has happened in the spirit world. A spectrum of different stories that I've had. I'm trying to think the best way to present this and how I've learned through the information that I've been able to present and the stories that I've been able to tell, because obviously I'm the one in a session telling stories where you
Right.
have to hear the
I have to hear the
stories.
stories, yeah.
Woof. It's like reverse therapy.
Mhm.
I have had people show up that have, led difficult lives or, we'll start with the myth that, if you commit suicide that you're going to hell.
Mm. That one is hopefully gone. That's why we've gotten the whole language change of committing suicide was like committing a sin.
Yeah.
So now we're saying died by suicide to
Yes.
get rid of this idea that somehow it's a mortal sin.
Yeah.
And I can tell a brief snippet when I had a suicide attempt when I was in my very early 20s. I remember a nurse coming into me and saying, "You're lucky we don't put you in jail. What you did was a crime." That it's
Whoa.
against the law to hurt yourself. And
Mm.
I remember at 24, I mean, this was
Yeah.
decades ago,
Yeah.
but at 24 to be in the situation where somebody's saying to you,
And her
what you
training.
did was
Right.
wrong.
And her
And
training.
and she should have known better.
Yeah.
So yeah, so of course I would imagine you have people that even especially like Catholics and people that have
Yeah.
those beliefs,
Yes.
you must run into people who've lost people that
All the
way.
time. My very last reading was a person
Oh,
in spirit
okay.
who, yeah, a woman who went to therapy for years, who was like, I said, I have a woman here who's in spirit. She says you guys were very much like a close friend, but like, are you cousins? Are you the aunts? Or like, I feel like you were a mentor. The woman in front of me in this physical world that booked the reading felt like my Uncle Charlie. She felt like she just loved people and wanted to give them hope, like, and be a sounding board and all of that. So this woman in spirit who came up, she said, thank you for being there for me. And, there was a lot of things that happened to her in her early childhood that she was not able to have the time or the presence or the healing that she needed before she became married and had children. And it was very difficult for her. And the things that you wouldn't believe could happen happened, because she just was in that hamster wheel of life and not getting help and da 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 da. And she felt very isolated and very hopeless. And this woman who wanted to talk to her, it ended up being her cousin, um, just wanted to know if she was okay, and had spent years in therapy wondering if there was more she could do,
Hmm.
more that she could do, and why wasn't it enough? Because the person that I connected with, as she was going through evidence of how she passed through suicide. And it was because she really felt like there was no way out.
Hmm.
And it's a very sensitive topic. And if anyone needs suicide, like help with those thoughts, please get help and please talk to someone. Please do not take your life, because it's not the answer. But yeah, you know, she came through very strongly, and she was definitely at peace in the spirit world. But she had, of course, wished that she would have just taken a little bit more time to think about
Hmm.
the longevity or the permanency of what that meant, if that makes sense, because she left behind 3 beautiful children.
Hmm.
So there was uh closure for the woman in front of me, to an extent of, she got to hear from her and know that she did do enough, and that she was not, like, the woman in spirit wasn't thinking that, she didn't do enough, like her cousin in the room. It just was a series of events that got way out of control. And I will say, oftentimes people who are in the spirit world because they have committed suicide, there has been some sort of alcohol or drugs that have been in their system while they're making these long decisions.
Decisions. Yeah, the
So be
big
very
decisions.
careful with your mental health while you are also under the influence of other things, because it can lead to
Well,
some,
what it can do is magnify a belief that's already there.
or your
And that's,
emotions that are
well,
not
sure.
processed. Yeah.
Well, and then all of the coping and the escapism can go to that next level of escapism. But it
Yeah.
is interesting, and I think it's very nice to hear that, you're sharing with people that it's not your fault, that they
No.
are okay. And
Yeah.
that to me is,
Absolutely.
there's a movie about this called The Ripple Effect, which talks
Yes.
about the people that are left.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would what you do, I think, is a bridge to sort of healing and
Yeah.
trauma, because you're not giving people
Mm.
negative, terrible messages. You're
No.
usually assuring people
Oh yeah.
of something. And what is the thing people want to hear from you usually? What do you
They're
think?
unanswered questions.
Hmm. Okay. Unanswered questions. What do
The
people
things
want
that
to
are
know?
subconsciously, like, ruling their life because of the pain and the grief.
So something
Sometimes they
that can
don't even
relieve
know.
it.
Mhm.
Okay.
To push their healing in the direction that is best for their soul. Yeah.
So do you usually get it? Let's say you have a room with 6 people. Are you going to be able how many of those people are you gonna be actually able to connect to in that way, or give them what they need?
Um,
Is it 100%?
I would say that my goal is to do it 100%, and that's what I
Mhm.
pray for before every session. I pray for that my energy field is clear of anything that's not connected to the highest form of love and for all of humanity. Like, just to be here and be present and to connect, for the highest and best for everybody in
So
earth.
that's the ideal,
Yeah.
but are there ever times where what you connect to doesn't feel helpful or does feel dark and that you have to
Oh,
either hold it back or run from
no.
it?
So I haven't ever connected to anything that made me feel like it was like from the spirit world. It's usually the people in the room that are resistant to hearing what I have to say. They're not
Okay.
ready. They're not ready. Or they're in a state of grief that they're paralyzed. And I will say, sometimes it is the grief, and sometimes people are not, they're, I don't know, how do I explain this? They're so stuck in their logical brain, or they're like so tight with like anger, because why would a 12-year-old pass from leukemia?
Mhm. Of
That when I'm
course.
giving
Yeah.
information and I'm literally like, I need you to say yes, I need you to say no, and I need you to say, I don't know. That's it. You don't have to tell me anything else. But they're so stuck in the emotion of the anger around the passing that they can't hear what I'm saying, because they are so, they have an idea that I'm going to like just talk about like end of days, or I'm going to talk about, and I'm like, look, I have a child coming through that's talking about his family and
Mhm.
who is there for him. Maybe grandma was the one in front of me, and aunt was the one that, was there to support grandma, but grandma can't handle the information that's coming through. So her daughter is helping grandma understand, like, it's okay. You got to relax a little bit. You got to understand that she's going to talk about, like, the 12-year-old in spirit is going to come through and talk about all the favorite things. He loved trains. He wanted to talk about trains with
Mhm.
grandpa, and like always have soda at grandma's house. Like
It's
all of
not
the,
always some profound revelation.
at first we're building up the energy and the relationship for the person to have the evidence of whatever the experience was. And what's interesting, when you work with me, I don't have a tick list, so I let the spirit come through however they want to come through with whatever information, because I feel like if I try to dictate the narrative, then I'm getting in the way.
Hmm.
And I don't know everything, and I don't know what they need to say, but oftentimes the evidence lends a hand to the message. And that 12-year-old may have been here for a very brief time, and what that grandma needed to know is that she made that experience the best it could possibly
Mm.
be, and that he was so loved, and he can't even fathom, like, that she can't receive that, if that makes sense. Like, please know you did enough. Please know I had the best time with you. You were the best grandma. You gave me so much. You were always there for me. And she's just stuck in that time where she's mad that whomever took him away from her, you know? And maybe the aunt bought her this reading and she didn't choose to be there. Maybe, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, I don't know the whole story because this is a recent reading that happened. And I just say, you know what? It's okay. If you're not ready, I'll refund you, and, we'll just go our separate ways. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe I'm not the right medium. I don't try to like pull it apart and why is it not working if the person is so like bound up. But, in that particular moment of me just saying, well, we can just wrap it up, she was like, no. And her daughter was like, Mom, I'm going to help you. I know you
Yeah.
don't want me to, but I'm going to help you because you're not saying yes or no. And I need you to like participate in the conversation. Can you take this evidence? Yes or no is pretty simple, but
Yeah.
sometimes people are just like, just stuck.
Have you ever had anybody get upset with the information as if um that you give it information and
Mhm.
they get really upset about it, not just in like, when we did the readings, when you were doing the readings here,
Yeah.
you were touching on people in a way that they were connecting to something very powerful, but they were never mad at you or they weren't
No,
upset with you.
no.
Does that ever happen where you give information and it gets a response that
Oh yeah,
feels
definitely.
wrong?
But also I have to realize that it's not about me. Like,
Mhm.
I can't take that personal. I can't take that personal. I have to have compassion and understanding for the person that is receiving this information and their understanding of what I'm doing, and really reflectively like work with them. Like, what is, if I'm being met with that, like, are you okay? First and foremost, are you okay? Because I would rather people feel comfortable and safe than push them to a place where they're not ready to either hear the information or like, why was it stinging? Like, let's understand that. I'm at this point really good with not just having to stay connected to the spirit world. Pause, spirit world. Let me check in with this person. What is happening here?
Can you do that
Yeah.
though?
Oh gosh,
Because
I could give you a sticky roller out of my book bag to like get lint off you and hold a reading and tell this person to hold their dog over there. Like, I could
that's
do
exhausting
it.
though. That's the
It can be.
multitasking that we should not be doing, right?
You're
As a
right.
Right, but
Oh
as a
my
high
gosh.
empathy person,
Yes, of
right?
course, but
That's
I
kind of,
can do it is the point.
you
Like, I can. Well,
can.
I have to, because you're talking about 6 people. I've done events where there's 65 people. There's
Okay.
so much going on in the room that I have to learn how to tune certain things out, and especially like, I have a woman in the back who came on oxygen. Her machine is like clapping every 5 seconds. Like, my hearing is at a decibel
Mhm.
that you wouldn't even want. I hear everything that's going on in the room. I feel everything that's going on in the room. So I have to be masterful in what I'm doing in order to show up to those bigger groups and, feel all the things, but stay focused.
But see, that's the
And I can
big
do it.
question when I was talking to people about having you on and I was asking
Yeah.
people, what would you want to know? And one of the questions I heard over and over again was the same. It was, how does she go to the supermarket? How do you
Oh,
live in the
yeah,
world
of
where
course.
everywhere you go, you and back up a little bit. You're sitting in a room with me and Emily, our producer, right?
Yeah.
There are three of us in this
Yeah,
room,
absolutely.
in this place where there are some people on the other side getting
Yeah.
therapy. Do
Yeah.
you have to walk in here
I'm
and
present with you right now. I'm
okay,
present
so
with
you
you.
can cut out
Emily,
all
you're
the noise.
beautiful. You're here, but I don't even think about you. I am
She's
over here.
behind the camera.
Yeah, I am over here. I am 1,000% present with you.
But you can do that if you go
Yes.
to the
Practice.
supermarket, you can
Yes.
do that.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Um, it's also an intention. If I showed up to the supermarket and I was in the parking lot and I felt like I was too sensitive, I just know it's not the right time for me. And I listen to my body and
Okay.
I go to the supermarket another time. Yeah, I'm not a sponge that just picks up everything. I am open when I'm ready to work. Spirit world knows that I communicate and I work with purpose and intention. And when I'm done, I am done. And I don't have the ability right away when I worked in that big group to turn it off,
Mhm.
but I do know what I need to do to take care of myself to turn it off.
But what if and
So
this
it's
is
on off. It's
and
like a
this was the
switch.
other part of that question,
Okay.
was somebody had asked me, and I thought it was a really great question. They said, "What if she is in the supermarket and she sees somebody and she feels something and that person is not aware?
Mm.
Can she dive into it without that person asking?" And I thought that
Um,
was kind of an interesting question.
Absolutely. I work very ethically.
Mhm.
It's like, would you want to give somebody therapy at the supermarket?
Even though they might need it.
Right.
Yeah.
And based on how you saw them treat another person,
Mhm.
and the things that you could help them with just a sentence, I'm sure, and how to like look at something or what that meant or, like just anything. But unfortunately, that person didn't give us permission.
Right.
And, you
So
know,
you wouldn't. So if you were near somebody at the deli and you felt it, you would just cut it right off.
I would remove myself if I even started
Okay.
to feel I know now that I just remove myself. I
Mhm.
go to a different room. I go to a different part of the grocery store. I mean, I could be at the gym, which is a place that I love to go all the time. And if I feel like someone is too close to me that I don't know why because I'm not participating in the
Right, right.
conversation that something is happening. I go to the different part of the gym. It is not that person's responsibility to do anything different. They mean no harm, and if they do, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Like they're
Mhm.
just doing whatever, and it could be their own personal energy or energy around them that is trying to participate, like spirit energy. And I don't even want to know. There's been times that it's happened with my friends at the gym too.
Yeah.
I having a conversation and there's people in the spirit world that sometimes don't have good boundaries and I'm like, "Oh, I'm
Well, they
talking."
don't in real
You know
life,
what I
so why
mean?
would they in the spirit
They
world?
usually do because I have the boundary set in place and I do believe that I have like such an amazing like team on the other side that helps me with these things. But like if it's happening, I just go, I just go. There's
Mhm.
been times where, I'm at a squat rack and the woman next to me comes over and she starts doing whatever and I know her and I'm like, "Hey, Veronica, do you have a headache?" She goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna go because now I feel your headache in my head. That's not
Oh.
mine." So I learned to know what's mine and not mine. And then
We
I
we
don't
get that in therapy sometimes,
yeah.
and this is one of these things that people don't talk about because we
Yeah.
sound we
Yeah.
sound like we're a little off, but if somebody talks to me about a panic attack, I'll immediately feel the pain in my chest.
Yeah.
And I think that's just this high level of empathy, or if I'm around someone who's anxious, I have to be very careful because I'll start
Feel
feeling
picking in.
anxious, right?
Yeah.
So this is about empathy. And I think it's so interesting because what I do and what you do are both empathy of different kinds. I think is that
You're a healer. You're a helper, you're a healer. You're living your purpose.
so
You're
then
aligned with your
what would you see as the difference
purpose.
then?
Nothing.
Okay.
I honestly believe that what I do, everyone is doing. It's their level of awareness and the
Mm.
participation of it. And if you want to intellectualize it, it starts to get a little weird. But
Mhm.
when you're not thinking of it, you're just like, oh, that's just who I am. That's just how I work.
So is it similar to the idea I love the idea of energies, right? When people
Yeah.
started talking about people's energies, I was like, "What is this hippie, crunchy,
Yeah.
earthy stuff?"
Hmm.
And then I started to realize I've always felt that about people,
Of course.
not in a psychic kind of way,
Oh, yeah.
but in, if Emily walks in the room and she's having a bad day,
Yeah.
I immediately feel a heaviness and I go,
Yeah.
"Oh," but we don't know enough to look outside of ourselves. We look at ourselves first and go, "Did I do something?"
Because the world is a
Versus
paradox, and
right.
we self it, and that is a good sign that we actually check in with ourselves, right? Like, is it
Yeah, that's
me?
the whole idea.
Right?
That's what we have to
Because
learn how to do. Nobody teaches us how to do that. Checking in.
yeah.
So what's the difference then if we look at all the levels of energy and of empathy? One of the questions I also got from somebody, which I thought was interesting, is how do you delineate a psychic from a medium?
Oh yeah.
And if you could answer that, that
Oh
would
yeah.
be a great
Absolutely.
question.
Psychic is purely in this physical world.
Mhm.
Mediumship is purely speaking to the dead.
So there's no overlap. Those are two different things for you.
Two different things.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So it's
For
because
everyone.
everybody thinks of
It's the
tarot
term.
cards and,
Yeah.
fortune telling.
Yeah.
That's very different than what you do.
That's psychic work. And
Okay.
when I work psychically, I call that a soul reading. And the
Okay.
soul readings that I provide that are connected with the intention of working with healing and empowerment as well is helping people identify the patterns that they maybe subconsciously don't realize that they're creating in their life that's connected to the trauma or the misaligned belief, which is therapy
Yeah.
in a sense.
Yeah.
And some people they need that proof, or they need that, like, they need that helper to connect the dots for them. And I'm able to do that.
Because what is it that you can share in a session like that? What is it that you can give, being who you are and knowing what you
Mhm.
know? What do you give to a person that besides the what happens on the other side,
Mhm.
what can you give because of your empathy in those kind of situations? What do you feel?
So I have a lot of reference points, right? So reference points of trauma, reference points of the things that I've healed from. So spirit will organically line up, like, people that will come to me where I am able to help them because I have the information, even if I'm only a couple steps ahead of them. So if we're talking to a client who is looking for a relationship and they just don't know if they'll ever be in a relationship, perhaps we may talk about the different ways that we're emotionally unavailable. Why can I give that information? Because spirit's probably giving me information in the ways that I've been emotionally unavailable in the
Okay.
past. But it has nothing to do with me. It has
Mhm.
everything to do with being in service and giving the connections to the person, and speaking of the times and ways that they're choosing their partners that are not actually lining up with the things that they are saying they desire to do or to have. They're choosing, life is a series of small choices, and then being responsible for the decisions that you've made and how it created the life that you're in. And these smaller choices that we can make can line us up for the greatest life, greatest love, as long as we choose with intention. And sometimes people are so unaware of where
But
it comes
that's the
from.
mirror of empathy, and I
Yes.
think that's what we share in the work that we do,
Yeah.
is that empathy, when you have a person who has true empathy, who can really see you
Yeah.
and feel things, you can be an accurate mirror.
Yeah.
So you can look at them and go, "This is what I see,"
Yes.
and they can hear it from you as an objective person.
And especially because I've never met them. Some people come, they're not even using their real name. They're
They're
not
trying to
telling
throw
me
you.
anything. And they're just like, oh my
I know
gosh.
I did that when we were here
Like, how
and
did
you
you
said, "Who do
know
you
that?
wanna talk to?" And I was like, "Nobody." Because there's the skeptic in me
Well, that's totally fine.
that says,
Yeah,
"I don't wanna give you any information because I wanna
totally
see
fine.
I'm testing you. I wanna see where you
Totally
go."
fine.
But then the other part of me that goes, "I don't really wanna give anything because I wanna have this experience without feeling
Yeah,
like it could be artificial." And I
of
think you
course.
must get that a lot. Do you get a lot of people who come to you who are skeptics, but they're still paying the money, they're still coming
Absolutely.
to ask the
So
question?
what I was offering you as, six people in the room and you were number six, if you haven't realized by like the fifth person in that I'm the real deal, I'm actually giving you more time.
Oh, so do you put the skeptics last?
No,
That just happens that way.
no. So what I was thinking is
I'm thinking that's why she waited
no,
for me last.
no. It was how it organically happened.
Mhm.
Somehow I ended up on this side of the room. And then I just was like, you know what? I'll just go through. But what I was doing for you that you may not have noticed is I was giving you more time because only have so much time for everyone. And
Mhm.
if I get someone you don't want to talk to, or wouldn't have had the impact that it had, like, I'm going indirect, and maybe you're just like, that was like a shitty connection, or I really wanted to talk to X person, a person that I mean, I don't even want to tell anybody you're reading. So it's like
No,
one
it's
of those
really I'm
things.
completely open
Yeah.
here,
So
so
it's like one
I
of
think
those
you remember.
situations. Yes, I do. And it's like one of those things where if that wasn't the most meaningful, I want to give you the most meaningful connection. And if you tell me just a relationship, oh my God, that's actually nothing, because everybody has a mom, everybody has a dad,
Right.
but we all have such different relationships with our mom and our dad. And I am still drawing from a blank screen. But I thought by like, after I've talked to one, two, three, four, five people, at that point, that you are less a skeptic and more, she already talked to five people and they were all like, holy crap, wow, that we already cut through that skeptic shit.
Yeah,
It's like we already
yeah,
cut through it. But if
absolutely.
not for you, then I'm more than happy to go indirect. But in my mind, I'm thinking I'm giving you the gift of giving you more time because I've already proved myself as a
But isn't
medium.
that the hard part? I think with my job, the hard part is that I have to convey warmth and intelligence immediately to prove myself to a new
Okay.
patient, right?
Okay.
When they come in, that's the only two things that I have to prove right away. I have to prove that I'm warm and I care about you and I want you to get better,
Yeah.
and that I'm intelligent enough to give you those ways,
Yes, the
right?
tools. Yeah.
So for us, if
Hmm.
I can do that in the first 5 minutes, my job gets a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I feel like with you, there was skepticism in the room and there was this pressure
Always.
to get, and when you didn't get it right, people were sometimes not real nice about it.
And that's okay. I don't even know
Okay.
the example of anybody that wasn't
It
really
wasn't
nice
it
about it.
wasn't terrible, but it
Yeah.
was definitely like people were almost
So here's
taking
the
the
thing.
like, nope, nope, nope. That
And
wasn't
then
right.
and where we could I wish you had an example so I can.
There was a person who you were talking about, a person, and she went, nope, that's not it. Because she had somebody in her mind that she wanted to talk to,
Okay, got
and
it.
somebody else must have come forward. And
Yeah.
she was just like, nope, 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 that's not true. But
Okay.
I realized it was because she had somebody in mind.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she wasn't accepting, she wasn't open to the person that could come through for her and to make that connection. Did we find out who that was?
We did.
Okay,
You
perfect.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did
So I'll
get
just
there.
go deeper. And
Mhm.
two, I love it when people tell me no because then I'll tell the person in spirit, well, you need to help me to give this person, like, come on, give them something that's going to trigger their memory. What did they think of you recently? What were they doing that was connected to you? What,
Mhm.
just stuff like that. So I will facilitate more of a question to the spirit world or to the person that's showing up to facilitate that instead of just giving whatever they're giving
But
me.
is that
So I have
like
to just dig
looking
in a little
through a
bit.
room? So if you and I are doing a reading and you see someone and I go, "No, that's not it." What is sort of the thing that happens that takes you from that person to the person that I wanted to talk to? Tell me what that's
So
like
I
for you.
always tell people there's an idea in your head of who you want to talk to, of course. And if I give you the option and you tell me that I can go direct, I will. And if I cannot get that specific person, please be open enough to know where I'm at. Because what we can do is build the energy of the connection with your mother in order for me to just get through that and whatever healing that you're needing today to get to perhaps your husband that passed away. That's just an example. That's not what happened with
Mhm.
you, but just as an example, because it happened recently. And I had a mother and daughter where it happened. And man, that uh, that was out of 10 people I read for that day. That was one of the hardest. And she just wasn't accepting that it was her mom, but her daughter kept going, you did have a brother in spirit that passed before your mother passed. And I said, I have a brother, Robert, in spirit. And she said, yes, he just passed recently too. And she just wanted to talk to her husband. And,
Right.
and I kept getting all of this different information of, the mom coming through, how her personality, what she looked like, how many kids she had, the order of how people passed, what was happening before she. And she just was like, I just want to talk to my husband. I said, I understand. And you don't have to talk to your mom if it would create more trauma or more, but let me build the energy up if it's okay with you so that I can be more in the flow. And I'm sure that once we get to a certain point, I'm not in control 1,000%, but I do know enough things about spirit communication and how I can get there. And as soon as that mom gave that, hey, I'm so sorry that I was so focused on that loss, and you were such a good girl and you rise to the occasion and you were such a helpful daughter with everyone and you're an amazing mother. And I never use these words because, she just wanted to convey these things of how tough that she was and that she needed to like love her and tell her how great she was. And we both cried. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank God. Now I got the
Right,
husband.
right. I got
Woo!
there. Yeah.
Finally.
But
And
you
the daughter was like, thank you.
But you can see, right? You can see almost a visual
Yes.
of when you're moving from one person to the next and when it's a
Yes.
person.
But
And
sometimes I am not getting the person that they
okay,
want, and I cannot
you
control it.
can't reach it.
It's very infrequent, but it does happen. It's
Mhm.
very infrequent, but it does happen. Yeah.
It is. It's so interesting because when you did my reading, you gave me someone and I had no idea who it was.
Okay.
And then I said, well, and then she wouldn't leave. Do you remember? You said she's really being like, she has something to say and I can't get her to go away so I can talk to who you really want to talk to.
Mm. It's hard
I
because
know
the
you probably
channeling,
had 1,000 people.
it goes in and it goes out, and I do remember like the actual connection.
Hmm.
Um, But no, I
But
can't.
the interesting part was I figured out later who it was.
Oh, I love it. That's so great.
But
That happens all the
but
time. I
it was
get so many
because of that.
emails, even with pets. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I didn't remember this." And I'm
Right.
like, "Yeah,
Because you had said, I think that it's somebody that remembers you, but you don't remember them. And it was somebody I had never met. It was
mhm,
my mother-in-law
love,
who passed
love,
before I ever met my husband.
love,
So but it was, and I went home to him and he said, how'd it go? And I said, well, there's this thing and I don't know who it was. And he's like, that was my mom.
I love."
So he's a
Hmm,
believer. I'm one of those
it's totally fine.
skeptics that
But that's
it
the
takes a
beauty of it.
lot,
No, but
but
that's the
I'm
beauty of
still
this. And
curious.
that's also why,
Mhm.
okay, after 10 years, that when people say no, I don't go home and go, "I'm never doing this again."
Right. Cause it's their
I
belief
know
system, not
it's
yours.
not even that. It's just I know that I'm working and that it's a valid connection, and I can feel that, like, if
Mhm.
it's meant to happen, it's gonna happen, and I'm not attached to it.
Well, and I think, but it's about the way that you approach it too. I think
Gently.
you are very gentle and you are very kind
Thank
and
you.
you allow for this curiosity.
Thank you.
And that's the way I go into everything in my life is I might not know the answer, but I am certainly going to be curious about it and I'm not going to attach a negative spin to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of my work as a
I
person.
I love too how the widows and their understanding because of their catalyst and how they were experiencing healing after their spouses had passed, how they were offering you support during your reading too, to like explain to you, no, this is how it works.
Well,
Do you
it's so
remember? That was
interesting
so
because
sweet.
you could tell the people in the room who were not skeptical and who were just really curious and that were believers. And then you could see the people in the room that were like me that were cautious. But I think it's a lesson for all of us in that we can never discount anything because what you're experiencing, I believe you're experiencing it.
Yeah.
Whether or not it fits with my value system or what I believe,
Yeah.
I'm still awfully curious about it, which is
Oh yeah.
why I wanted to have you on because my feeling is I always want to understand what I don't know. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm kind of hoping for everybody listening is
Yeah.
that if they're coming into this going, I don't know what to feel about it.
Yeah.
You're a great person because I know that you're operating from empathy. And I find you incredibly credible and incredibly
Thank you.
believable because I believe I've watched you have an experience
Yeah.
and I see you feeling
Yeah.
things. That's
And also when I was
big.
like, I just have to go now.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, you were
I'm
done.
like,
He was poking at you.
I was like, I just have to go because she was still talking after they were just, having conversations after we were done with the whole reading. But
Mhm.
also, I'm like, okay, so something still's happening over here. And I started finishing the actual end of life symptoms that her husband had before he passed. As she was saying it, I was like, we just can't talk anymore about this. I'm going to
Yeah.
go to the bathroom. I'm going to try to see if I can shake this off.
Right,
I'm going to
right.
come back into the room. I'd have all these little things so like to turn it off.
Mhm.
And I just couldn't. I was like, okay, bye guys. I have to go now.
But
But that
that's
was like a half hour after we were done.
oh, it was
So
yeah,
time
yeah.
flies. And I'm glad that I was like, oh my God, thank God Deborah was able to give support to the widows because I had like they just wanted to talk more about it
And
and
I had
give
had a
more
good day,
details.
so
I
I
was
had
like,
something to give that day.
thank God. I was like, because I was experiencing like heart problems, you
But
know?
that's the empathy drain, right? And I think that's something that you
Yeah.
and I have talked about before is that there is and when you have a job that requires your empathy
Hmm.
as your job, that you have to have all these things in place to take
Yeah.
care of yourself afterwards. And I work with a lot of new therapists
Yeah.
and trying to teach them that, when you turn the doorknob to leave, that you have to leave everybody on the inside of the door, not the
Yeah.
outside of the door. So I think for you, it sounds like you're getting very good at sort of being able to
And know
manage
when it's
that
time
empathy
to go. And
drain.
people will understand. I used to not think that, in a moment where we have these beautiful souls that have gone through great loss that are upset and they're, needing more support and you're talking to them of how, your brownstone can help them.
Mhm.
And tears, like genuine tears. And it's not that anybody who wants to be a helper or healer wants to ever leave, but I always explain, I'm having a hard time. I got a 2-hour max that I can stay into the state. I still need to get myself home and I can't even see straight yet.
Mhm.
Like I don't feel good. So I have to go take care of myself because I'm still in that state of receiving. And, I want you to be okay. And if, you were there, that's great. But if it was before that, because I think you were able to be engaging and help them, I would have had to wind it down even earlier.
Right,
That's
right.
we talked about it before we started. I said, Deborah, I got to get out of here when we're done.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this is
It's
what'll
because
happen.
sometimes it's really
Yeah.
hard to end it. It's the same
Yeah.
problem we have where people at about the 53-minute mark in a session, sometimes they're really getting into it. And
The
that's when
meat.
and it's so hard. It's the hardest. I think it's one of
Yeah.
the hardest things about my job. And anybody who is listening, who is a patient or former patient, I know you guys are out there, you know that I was really not good at it in the
Yeah.
beginning. And it would be an hour in, and then I'm 5 minutes late for my next person. And
Oh, yeah.
because you don't want to cut off the empathy, because when you're giving, you're getting something back too.
You wanna know a secret?
Sure. I
I
love that.
set an alarm in my therapy sessions that I have with the therapist because I know I'm a huge talker. So it goes off
To
at
cut
the
you off.
50, yeah, I cut myself off
To all my
so that
patients
I
listening,
know.
I love this idea, by the
So
way.
my alarm will go off and my therapist will it's like, "Still, Hope, what are you doing?" I'm like, "It's 50 minutes in. I just know that now I just need to wrap it up," you
Yeah,
know?
for
And 2,
you.
I think that because I'm in the space of reading for others and I have to stay on time and there's a certain window of it, I have a timer that says I've got 8 minutes left. And I say, "This is just so we know that it's not gonna be a hard stop." And then you feel like we just stopped at a very hard spot and I'm pushing you out the door. No, we gotta wrap it up and make sure you're asking questions because people will wait till
Mhm.
I'm done and then be like, "Okay, but can you talk to?"
We call it doorknobbing in therapy. So it's when their hand is on the doorknob and they're getting ready to leave and then they drop a bomb.
Yeah.
And I'm like, please don't do that. And then so what I do is next time I see them, I say, what you did was awesome. I'm glad you shared,
Yeah.
but we got to do it at the beginning.
Yeah. 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 So, yeah.
So empathy and self-care, I think that's a lesson for everybody listening. Because I think a lot of people that listen, a lot of people I talk to that are listening here and watching are people that are high empathy and they suffer because of it.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that are listening are people that struggle with things in their mental health because they give more than they should, or they care more. The fact that they're even here is that they're people that are growth oriented, and
Mhm.
our listeners are people that are very interested in being better and learning.
Yeah.
And I think that the lesson I want everybody to take from what we're talking about is that we're these high empathy people that are out there, and that we have to take care of ourselves or we can't perform.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that different for most people out there that have different levels of empathy, is that we all have to be mindful of that whole idea of you're not pouring from the empty cup, and that
Yeah.
you have to mind your own nervous system, and you have to make sure that your mind is hearing all the things, and your body and your mind are communicating all
Mhm.
the time. Are you listening to all of that? And how are you taking care of yourself? Just like you're saying,
Yeah.
I felt it and I had to leave.
Yeah.
How many times are people sitting through things that their body is saying you need to
Yeah.
leave?
Yeah. And
So
and
it's an
love
important
yourself
lesson.
so much that you will honor yourself and work on that if you can't. Just love yourself so much because I think that the things that we struggle with, the thoughts if we don't is why didn't I do that? Or
Mhm.
it's self-abandonment. And then you
Yeah.
go through that cycle again. And a lot of us, and I say me, that have experienced neglect, we have to learn to choose ourselves.
You weren't taught that, and that's the
No.
problem with being a child of
So
neglect, is that
you might feel
nobody
guilty
taught
in the
you that.
beginning,
Right.
when the people are still talking about like the things they went through or crying, and you have to say, I can no longer hold space for you. Like that's basically what I
Mhm.
was saying without saying it. And it's hard. It's so hard.
Yeah, it
So,
is, and it is because we're
yeah.
not taught that. We're taught that that's selfishness, that self-care is
No,
selfishness, and it's not.
no.
And one of the questions I
Mm,
would love to ask you is that
mhm.
in all the things that you've seen, I look at it as I would look at somebody who had traveled to all 7 continents. They would
Oh my
know
gosh.
things
It's
that I
so
wouldn't,
cool.
right? They would know things that you and I don't know because we haven't been to all 7
Unbelievable.
continents, right?
Yeah.
I look at you that way, and I think you have been to places that none of us ever go.
I've been to Africa.
Well, I
I've
mean,
been
like,
to like Russia, like
right,
in my
in
mind
your
with
mind.
all these different, I've been to all sorts of different like
You were
religions and
describing
oh my
mountains
gosh.
with somebody that you were reading,
Yeah.
right? So if you've been to those places, you've also learned things. Like
Yes.
somebody who's been somewhere, I went to
Yes.
China. I learned
Yeah.
all kinds of things in China.
Yeah.
What do you take all that
Mm,
experience and knowledge? What do you know, or what have you
mm.
learned from people that have passed over that you think that we could use here and learn now? What is the regret or the thing that you hear that you
Yeah.
could sort of, and I'll give you an example of what I'm looking for is I love hearing the studies of people in their 90s where they ask them questions
Yeah.
about their life.
Yeah.
What would you do different? What was meaningful? That there's value in that.
Yeah.
What can you give us that's valuable that you've learned from this work of traveling all over the place?
Before you were even done, I was getting choked up even thinking of the answer
Mm.
because there are so many people who they get stuck. They get stuck in their stories. They get stuck in, the fear. They get stuck in the things, well, this is how I've always been. And I don't know how to communicate. And just the different things that I feel like if we knew the impact of just coming back to our hearts and living with our heart open, no matter what that looked like, no matter how hard that was. Some of the strongest people have been through immeasurable grief and loss and things that you can't even believe would happen to such a beautiful person, right? And it's really how you handle it. It's really how you move forward from it and how you look at the world that will impact not only your experience, but the ripple effect that your love will have on everybody around you.
Perspective, the power of perspective.
And my uncle, I mean, he was the most amazing, consistent person that, one time my car was on two cinder blocks in front of his house. The car had 800 miles on it. And I was devastated. It felt so personal. And I'm stomping up and down the sidewalk. And I'm like, these thieves couldn't even do a good enough job and take all four tires. They left one. And he's like, you're going to get four new tires with 800 less miles on them.
Wow.
He's
There's some
excited for
perspective,
me.
right?
And I could not take that
Mhm.
information. And he was never like a physical person where he would like, grab me or yell at me or anything like that. But I mean, I was out of sorts and he was taking pictures. He thought this was kind of funny.
It was a story to him.
Oh, yeah. And I'm so
Mhm.
glad I have those pictures. But I also remember him putting a hand on either shoulder gently and saying, get a grip.
Mhm.
And I'm like, he never talks to me like that. So why am I wheeling out so fast and so hard in this situation? And, back to like some of the soul readings and the things, the lessons that will repeat themselves. If you haven't healed the thing, this was a car that I bought brand new. My other car I bought brand new, I lost when my dad went to prison. That was all my childhood hard worked money.
Mm.
And it was just a car, but it was everything I ever worked for. And it was my freedom. And it signified that for me. And I
Yeah.
had to redo it. It had nothing to do with the three tires that someone stole. It was the hurt from the thing that I didn't work on, which was my attachment to when I lost everything when my father went to prison. And there was just a perspective of that, just, hey, Hope, have you learned? How are you going to
Yeah.
look at this? Because when I lost my dad in that situation or my life in what I thought it was, I gained my freedom. I gained myself back and my freedom to like not be in an abusive situation and have loving family around me like my uncle and all of that. And now here I am with my uncle and the same thing happens. Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Constantly.
It's security and it's perspective,
Mhm.
right? And that
Mhm.
I found in my life and my own experiences, the only way I ever felt secure was when I started to look at things
Yeah.
differently and I started to heal.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I have a lot of respect for what you're doing because I think you're opening a window
Yeah.
with that to other people to say, you're okay. You're
Yeah.
okay. They're
Yeah.
okay. And
And you're not
let's look at
alone.
this a different way, right?
Yeah.
That's why people come to you
Mhm.
is they want a different they want and I remember thinking that day that I was going to sit in was thinking I could just use another opinion right now. I could use another
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
And I think there's something very hopeful about what you do
Yeah.
that does help people to shift their perspective because what's grief? We get lost in the loss
Yeah.
and we get
And
stuck in
what we
it,
thought our life was going to be and who
right?
was going to be there, and like it was such a lonely childhood. But on the other side of it, when I always knew my uncle had my back, but then he really had my back. He
Mhm.
really had my back. And then when I lost him physically, there was such a fear that other people went through this and they felt alone too. And I was like, I'm never going to let anyone who's open to this idea think that their loss
Mhm.
is permanent and that they're going through like this alone. No.
That's the only gift of trauma that I have ever known, is that with my work, it's the same, is that I know what it is to be suicidal. I know what it is to feel alone, and I
Yeah.
never want other people to feel that way.
No.
And I think that's the only gift of trauma, is our ability to say, I have learned something, and I'm going to give you that learning so that you don't have to walk through that alone. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
One of the coolest things of this, Hope Taylor Medium experience is that when I was 17 and my father went to prison, I had to legally change my name and my social
Mm,
to work with the victims advocacy group to put me in a better place that was safe. When someone's charged, they're out for a period of time on bail.
yeah.
They could potentially act out, and
Mhm.
my father was. So it was a quick sweep to put me someplace safe. And I didn't like the name Hope, but I kept hearing it.
Wow.
So I chose Hope.
You chose it.
And I thought to myself, this is like so sad. That's all I have. And now I'm like, wow,
It's everything.
holy shit.
It's everything.
Like, thank God that I
I
didn't give up on
absolutely.
myself and the
Yeah.
idea that I could grow into something that was great, even from the, you know, the dark days when
Mhm.
I didn't know what was statistically, there was a lot that was shown to me or told to me that could happen to me if I didn't do A, B, or C. And I knew that I had to do things my way. I was a little stubborn. And so I didn't seek therapy till much later in life. And I did a lot of the healing by myself in
Mhm.
different unconventional ways.
But I think there's something about hope that is the key to everything.
It's
It's the
wild.
belief that I'm not always going to be where I am.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what you do for people. It's part of what I do for people. And I think that I'm learning a lot about what else could be out there, and you are a reminder to me about staying curious and not making assumptions about what I don't understand or what I don't believe, because I can only believe what I
Oh my
feel.
gosh. And don't like staying open and curious. That's like the whole point of learning and growing. Like, I feel like we're kind of just already dead if we're just not, and not dead like in the sense of like
Right, right,
spirit,
right.
but like stagnant or stuck or
If we're
that thing
not
that people
growing,
regret
we're
when
standing
they're
still.
just like,
Yeah.
this is how it is and that's it. Like I
Mhm.
even dated a guy who was just like, when you die, you go into the earth. I was like, cool. Like I don't need to convince you anything. But then it was just like, like he's doing these things that him and his dad used to do. And all of a sudden, like I am threading a tire like wheel in the right pattern in the hub that like I'm just like asking his dad in my head how to do this. And he's looking at me like,
So sometimes it's fun.
sometimes it's amazing.
I love
Like
that.
where I'm just like, help me. And then I can do it. And he looks at me like he wants to marry me.
That's
And I'm
such a
just like,
great
he's like, how
example.
did you know how to do that? And I was like,
Did you
ask your
tell him?
dad.
Oh, you did tell him. So
Oh
that's
yeah. Now
interesting.
this man is completely convinced that his dad, he's got pictures everywhere. He talks to him. Like it was such a cool healing. And
Yeah.
we're still very close friends. But it was like one of those things where I was just like,
Look, we have to stay open. We have to stay curious, because just
yeah,
because we don't understand does something
right.
does not mean that it's not real.
And to be clear, that was before I was like open to telling people I could do mediumship. Like he did not know that I could do what I
Right.
did, but he had an idea
You
and
were just YouTubing it.
he was kind of testing me. He was YouTube. He literally spent hours on YouTube. He started drinking at one point to try to figure this out. And I was upstairs and I heard Hope and I was like, yep.
You just had to change the
Come
channel.
down here. And I was literally I just went, dude, like just a quick something and they all all lined up and
I
he
feel
was
like that would be very helpful to have spirit guides at
access. I
certain
don't need
things.
to know everything, but I need to have
You
access.
need to have access. So
Thank
I
goodness.
love this. I love this conversation. I love that you're here. And I want you to share with everybody how they can find you
Oh
and
yeah.
what kind of services that you provide, because
Yeah.
I think that a lot of times when I work with people, I will send them everywhere. I will send them for
Yeah.
acupuncture. But I
Me
actually
too.
did send somebody once to a medium
Yeah.
because she was struggling so hard with her grief and she had all these unanswered questions, and it was actually really helpful for her.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
just tell them how they can find you
Yeah, I
and
try
what
to
you can
make it
do.
easy. I try to make it easy. Hope Taylor Medium. It's everything. So www.hopetaylormedium.com. My Instagram handle, Hope Taylor Medium, and Facebook. It's /, it's facebook.com/ Hope Taylor Medium. So I'm on all the major socials. I'm on TikTok too. I don't do a whole bunch in TikTok right now. Um, but it's there. Maybe I'll get back to that. I got really busy. Thank you guys for that. Um, but it's all there. And what I do with our, mediumship, we've talked at great length with connecting with loved ones, but I also connect with pets, and the soul reading. So not necessarily a psychic that's going to be like, you're going to find love in October of 2026 and his name is going to be Brian. And no, we're not doing that. But we are going to work on identifying what we can do today to help you with your healing empowerment to live the life that you desire. And if there's anything that is coming up that you would deem like a block, or that, repeated patterns, like I'm more than happy to walk through that. And do, I have fun with people through these. How many times do we laugh?
Yeah.
We laugh more
Yeah,
than you
it's true.
think. We're
It's
talking about
true.
some heavy stuff today, but we have a good time. We do. So yeah, so that's what I love to do. The mentorship is a little bit more automated stuff online. Like I do have little bits of PDFs, and courses and whatnot. I haven't been able to teach a class in a while, but it may come back around when I get a
So
little more
teaching
settled.
people how to
Yes.
channel this about
I've done
themselves.
a lot
Okay.
of mentorship, for people all over the world, which is has been wild, to teach people from Australia how to do
Mhm.
mediumship and see them, carry on. It's so cool.
And we have listeners all over the world. So
Yeah.
you work virtually
Yes.
as well if
Yes,
you
I
need.
work
Okay.
virtually and I work
Okay.
in person in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would hope that if you have any curiosity about this, feel free to reach out. And my sunshines, thank you for being here with us today. This was a lot of fun. And I hope you remember to stay present and stay curious. See you next time.
Thank
Bye.
you.